Good afternoon, and again, my name is Craig Cohron. Our farm name is Heritage Farms. A little bit about myself and our farm. I am a full-time farmer, a graduate of Western Kentucky University. I live there with my wife, Tina, as well as my mother and father, and my sister and brother-in-law also live on the farm. We're a very diversified farm with forages, beef cattle, 2 poultry broiler houses. We also raise corn, soybeans, and wheat for grain, and we do chop some of that corn for silage on our farm. Forages, you just can't have enough. We face this challenge as a growing beef operation, trying to increase our cow numbers without reducing corn and soybean acres. We learned that that was not possible to do with traditional hay and pasture alone. And we've learned that something green needs to be growing 12 months out of the year somewhere on that farm, producing forage. And quality is also a must. And our solution, after a lot of trial and error over the years, in producing quality in volume, was to make round bale haylage. Keys that we've learned to making round bale haylage over the years: number one is proper plant maturity. The plastic does not enhance forage quality, it only preserves it. Sugars, energy, and high quality all go together to form the package. Proper moisture. You can make haylage anywhere from a dry 35% up to a 60% and make good haylage. We made some out of 68%. It was very heavy and hard to move. We learned that lesson. We're back down to 40 to 45%. I like that range because it's a good balance between too heavy and a bale that's too dry to ensile. How we make haylage on our farm: we use a Cohron 10.5 foot cut polycomb conditioner, and we lay the windrow out wide and flat to capture as much of the sun's energy as possible. We come in 24 to 36 hours later, depending on the weather. A lot of the times the sun and wind. Wind does a really good job of drying you out, even sometimes if you don't have the sun. And then we let the windrow dry for a moment, for a little while, to make sure the top of the windrow is not sticky before we start baling. Then we bale into well-formed, tight 5x5 bales. And as I also stated, we are a mixed farm, very diversified with grain and cattle. And some of our equipment may look oversized, but it has a use somewhere else on the farm. Again, it's very important to form tight, well-formed bales. This is very important when you're trying to expel the oxygen out of baleage. We try to have someone moving the bales toward the wrapping site while baling to get a head start on wrapping, because after you get done baling, it's like a whole other job to start getting everything wrapped. And we use 7 to 8 layers of poly film, just a little extra insurance to make for sure that we've got the oxygen cut off. And we try to get it done that night. We don't go to bed until the last bale is wrapped. That's why tractors have lights on them. We need to use them and get the oxygen cut off. This is the wrapper that we chose. It's a very simple design that uses a small tractor to supply the hydraulic power to guide the wrapper through the field. The tractor doesn't pull the wrapper actually just forces the tractor to roll forward with the hydraulic power created. Just another view of a bale being set upon the wrapper, different angle. Storage. Need to store these bales high and dry, out in the open, away from trees and rodents. And the path of the wrapper should be free of brush and stones or anything that could puncture the plastic. Anytime we puncture that plastic and we don't notice it, we're letting oxygen into that bale and we're deteriorating our feed. So we use the proper repair tape to fix any hole that we might find throughout the storage season, which is most of the summer and into the fall. And then later we'll use forage testing to know what feed to feed to each type of animal depending on what its quality level is. We will now talk about forages for our cow herds. We graze as well as put up a lot of stored feed. We can't determine what the weather is going to be. It was very hot and dry in Kentucky this year, and stored feed become very important to us. We graze perennial cool season grasses like many of you might. We also seed a lot of fall seeded annuals after corn and soybean harvest. These are cover crops, but they are dual purpose as grazing crops as well. Takes a lot of the pressure off of our cool season perennial pastures. We also seed warm season annual grasses. Where we use this mostly is in fields that the perennial cool season grasses, the stands weakening just before renovation. Stored feed is a lot of the same feeds: cool season annual grasses and small grain haylage. Warm season annual haylage, sorghums, sorghum Sudans, Sudan hybrids. Cool season grass hay, dried and cured like many of you might. And we also chop silage, corn, and forage sorghum. Grazing, this is last year, this time. A lot of these pictures that you're going to see were taken in February. We're turning cattle out on pasture. They were having calves, high nutrient requirement, needing to increase their milking ability, and this is what we were turning out on this time last year. This particular variety is MO1 annual ryegrass. It works very well as a grazing crop as well as a haylage crop. This, I think I skip forward, it would be good to look at this slide first. This is a herd of cows close to the house. This was a winter without annual forages, fall seeded. Calves look nice. Cows are not in too bad a condition, but I do see a little back line on these cattle. Same herd of cows, a different year with annual ryegrass. Calves look the same, but let's look at the back lines on those cows and the body condition score. We can tell a difference for sure. Another slide, January 9th, 2012, just a few days from now, had that in South Central Kentucky. Stored feeds, another important to our operation. Forage sorghum. A couple years ago, we started experimenting with forage sorghums, and this particular variety was raised this year. It was a 94-day BMR 6, and it yielded 18 ton to the acre in 2012. It was a very, very dry and hot year for us. We were very happy with those yields. Forage sorghum, we plant it with the same equipment that we use corn and soybeans. Just use different metering units in the planter. Forage harvester, the tail end of chopping season this year. Here we're cutting BMR 6 Sudan hybrid. The Sudan's a little more finer stem than a sorghum Sudan. This particular field, it was 5.5 acres in this little field, and it made 22 rolls of high moisture forage this year on the first cutting. We were very happy with that, and very high quality at the same time. As I was talking about earlier about laying the forages out wide, you can see the back of our cutter how we've put a kit on it to make it a swath wider, and that's an example of how we're doing that to get more sun to the crop. Here we're baling some sorghum Sudan that was double cropped behind corn this past year. The corn literally died in the field in July, and we had to go in and chop it to salvage anything out of the crop. We had fertility still on the ground. We had 90 days of growing season left if it would rain, so we took the chance. We pulled the drill across the field and harvested a lot of tonnage off of those acres. This is a nice example of sorghum Sudan haylage when it's put up properly. Notice the nice golden color. This is a BMR 6 sorghum Sudan. This particular cutting, the feed test on it was 81.93 relative feed value, which worked really well on brood cows that winter. The next class of animals that we have to develop forages for are forages for stockers and heifer development. Alfalfa. We're not typically in an alfalfa area where we farm, but we're using a Kingfisher variety 444. It works very well on our it's branch rooted. It works very well on our wetter soils. We're using this to feed to our weaned calves just after we wean them and precondition them in combination with corn and sorghum silage. This is an example of what nice alfalfa haylage looks like after the plastic is cut off of it before it goes to the bale feeder. This particular cutting was made on Thanksgiving Day. It was cold that day. We were only getting about 4 hours of drying time or wilting time between the dew from the night and when the frost burned off during the morning. We also feed forage sorghum silage to these calves, free choice, in these long feed type wagons. An example of how this year we have performed with a forage-based diet on preconditioning calves. One herd that we have is considered the Meeks herd. The weaning average this year was 633 pounds. We had a good start, and I truly believe that that's the reason we had such a high weaning average. The mothers were grazing annual ryegrass and milked very well. 52 days in, they're averaging 730 pounds. That's an average daily gain of 1.86. We could probably deduct some days off of that with the weaning stress that we know that we have after the day that we wean, and those days are included. Annual ryegrass pasture for bred heifers. This was in December, just a month ago. We were grazing our replacement heifers and second calf heifers in the same pasture. Try to aid them, keep them in good flesh so that we can get them calved in again in the spring. Facility improvements and innovations. We use large rubber tire troughs. We have built larger back pens in our working facility this past year. Rebuilt some. We're using dividers. We've kind of got a corral inside a corral for sorting ability. This is just a tour up through the working facility. Management considerations when you're trying to pull a lot of forages off of every acre. We also have broiler houses, and we use that fertility, the litter, in our forage program. Soil compaction. Soil compaction is a big issue when you're double cropping and you're running over that ground early in the season, or cutting a wheatlage or a ryegrass haylage, and we're using a minimal disturbance, no-till ripper, as per se, behind a large tillage tractor to eliminate that soil compaction that we're developing from years and years of running over the ground with heavy equipment. Again, we need to try to grow feed as close to the feeding area as possible. This is something we try to do. And the high moisture bales are heavy and they're hard to move, and this is a reason we do that, to cut down on cost for moving bales and silage. And we need to dispose of plastic film properly. And spoilage is also a consideration when you're dealing with higher moisture feed and not overfeeding and having feed go to waste. In conclusion, haylage may not be for everyone, but it has been very good for our farm. Thanks for listening.